Now, as of recently, most of my videos like this have been on my Sony ZV-1, the little vlogger point and shoot RX100 style body camera that Sony put out, because the sensor in it is so good that it looks like a bigger body camera when you're just watching the footage. It doesn't look like a point and shoot. It looks really crisp and clear. So I usually am using that. It's smaller, it's easier to use, but the main reason I'm using it is because it has a flip screen. It has a screen that can articulate out to the side that I can see myself in, so I know that I'm recording and that I'm in frame and that I don't look like an actual idiot. Right now, I'm recording on my Sony A7 III, mostly because I just got a new 20mm lens, the Sony 20mm 1.8, so it's a little bit easier for me to actually know that I'm in frame, even though I can't see myself, because it's a pretty wide shot. Now, that being said, I also wanted to do this because I'm so used to now recording walking around and kind of vlog style videos on the ZV-1 that I remember what it was like to do it on a big camera like this, and I just remember that it was annoying and not as just simple. And that's why I used the ZV-1, because it looked good, I could put a microphone onto it, I could see myself, and it was also small and easy to carry around and set up, and it didn't make making videos a burden. Now, with all that being said, you still have options like the Sony A7s III that just came out, flip out screen, video camera, but it's $3,500. I personally don't have that much right now, and I know a lot of people who are doing videos just for YouTube don't have that much either. So that brings up the camera that is the Sony A7c. What Sony did was they took an A7 III, chopped the viewfinder off, made it a rangefinder body, kind of like and very similar to the A6600, made it one card slot, basically made the rangefinder awful to use, put on a flip out screen, and called it a day. So it's basically an A7 III in terms of how it works, with the addition of a flip out screen, a rangefinder body instead of a viewfinder. Also, they added in real-time eye autofocus, which is the eye autofocus system that's in the A7S III, the ZV-1, and came from like the A7R Mark IV, and I believe the A9 series, maybe A9 II. Point being, the camera sounds like it's going to be really good for video makers and not bad for photography, because it has the same architecture and sensor as the A7 III, which takes really good photos. Now begs the question of, do I want this camera? Well, yes and no. Now, if I could own or just go buy another camera right now and keep my A7 III, I would probably buy the A7C just to use as a strict video vlogging YouTube camera, because it seems like a really good tool for that usage. But I shoot weddings, I shoot a lot of client work in terms of photography, and there's two big things that really kill me for the, really turn me off to the A7C. One of the biggest ones is only one card slot. Now, I know to make the body smaller, they kind of had to do this, but the body is like the exact same size as the A7 III, just with the viewfinder cut off, so I don't think they really had to do this to make it work. But when I shoot weddings or even music videos and things where I really don't want to have to go back and reshoot, I always shoot to two cards just in case. I've never had a card fail, knock on wood. I've never had a card fail, but it's gonna happen eventually. It's just bound to. So that really kills it for me. And also the rangefinder, if it's the same as like the 6600 and the 6500, it's just really not comfortable to use. There's a very small rubber like rim around it, but not enough to like block out the light if you're in a really bright scenario. The A7 III's is pretty good and it works fine when you're in bright conditions, but I just don't think that I would enjoy using a body style like that. They also made the grip a little weird. They didn't use the same texture that they use on the A7 III or the A7 R4. They used a really weird, like, slick rubbery material, and I haven't felt it yet, but I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it. Really, the biggest thing drawing me to this camera is the flip out screen and the real-time eye autofocus, and the hope that they use gyro data so that I can use Sony Catalyst stabilizer on the footage. Now, in a perfect world, I'm gonna get this camera and hopefully that'll be my video rig while I can use this camera for professional shoots and photos. But we'll see. Right now, I have a pretty good idea of me being in frame because I'm using the Sony 20mm, and beforehand, the shortest lens before I picked up this the other day, the shortest focal range I had was 28mm on my Tamron 28-75, and that was just really annoying to shoot with because it was longer, and I never knew if I was in frame because it was not really wide angle, but this 20mm is a pretty wide angle for the most part, and I can be pretty close to the camera and know that I'm in frame, which makes vlogging on the A7 III all the more easier. It makes it much easier vlogging on the A7 III having a wide angle lens. I still would really like to see myself without having to pull out the Sony app and connect it to the camera. So for now, at least, I think that in my situation, it probably makes more sense to keep this camera because I can still use it for vlogging, and this wide angle makes it a lot easier to like make sure that I'm in frame because I'm pretty close to the camera, but I know that I still have a good amount of room. I could get real close and still be in the frame. But for now, I think that this ZV-1 really is enough. If I have this and this, I can make anything work. And like I said, and I'll pick up a shot on this just to show you, but this ZV-1 has the eye autofocus, the real-time in-video eye autofocus that the higher-end like A7R Mark IV has, and it really doesn't look bad. If I need to, you know, defocus the background, I think it was already pretty much defocused, but this looks good for what it is. And even though it's not as wide angle as this camera, I know that I'm in frame because I have a screen to the side to make sure that I'm in frame. And I could be wrong, and tell me if I'm wrong, but the RX 100 series sensors, which is what's in this Sony ZV-1, look really good. They look like a bigger bodied camera, at least to me, and I couldn't tell a difference if it was shot on this or if it was shot on, you know, an APS-C Sony camera. Unless you're in, you know, a darker situation, then yeah, I see the difference. But in a scenario where I'm well lit, I'm by a window, and I have a pretty, you know, deep background in the shot, personally, I can't tell. Here, I mean, it's not entirely blurry, and this is probably much blurrier, but it doesn't look bad. So, if you have a ZV-1 and you have an A7 III, do you need an A7C? I don't know. I guess we'll see.